Now, if I asked you the question, what is the easiest type of photography to get into? I'm fairly confident the answer would either be landscape or street, right? But what would you say if I said macro is actually the easiest? Because one, you never need to leave your home, and two, you don't even need a macro lens. When it comes to landscape photography, it can be as simple as sticking a kit lens on any old camera and just getting out there and shooting. But for some people, the fact that they don't live anywhere near that kind of thing may make landscape photography impossible right from the get-go. If you're a young person who is not old enough to drive, if you can't drive for whatever other reason, if you live in a big city, landscape photography becomes incredibly difficult. Now, when it comes to street photography, the gear is very simple. You don't need anything special. You can do it with your phone. But if you don't live near a city, if you don't have the confidence to go out there and photograph complete strangers, street photography is completely out of the question. Macro, however, you can do it in your own home. All of the images that you saw at the beginning of this video were shot either in my bedroom, in my living room, or in my back garden. It is so simple. And going back to what I said about not needing a macro lens, all you need is macro extension tubes to reduce or eliminate that minimum focus distance of any lens. All right, so to demonstrate this, what I'm going to do is I've got the EM10 set up just down here, pointing at this flower. I'm using the 60mm f2.8 Emswico macro lens, no extension tubes, just straight onto the camera. And then I'm going to take that image and then I'm going to switch for the 45mm f1.8 with the macro tubes and just let you see the comparison. So here it is. So as you can see from that example, there is a difference, but it's not as big as you might think. These extension tubes I'm using aren't expensive. They're £25 on Amazon, and these are electronic ones, so you can still use the autofocus in camera, which is obviously a bonus. But you can also use an M42, for example, to Micro Four Thirds adapter in conjunction with these, and use these macro extension tubes to use vintage lenses to get a similar effect. Now, £25 for the extension tubes compared to I paid just shy of £300 for the 60mm macro lens. It is quite a significant difference, and if you are on a budget, the macro tubes are definitely the way to go. So the cost of entry for macro photography is really low. Whatever camera you already have, whatever kit lenses you may already have, and some extension tubes. That's it. Now, there are other things you can buy to make life easier. For example, you can buy lights of some sort, be it a ring light or an off-camera flash or some constant lights like my little LED panel. But these things, again, can be had for a relatively low amount of money. You'd probably be able to get one of those lights and some macro tubes still for a vast amount less than you would for a dedicated macro lens. So while we're on the subject of light, I want to talk a little bit about lens choice. Now, I've already said you can use a kit lens or a vintage lens, and that's absolutely true, because shooting wide open or with a lens with a fast aperture isn't necessarily the best way to go anyway. See, as with every type of photography, the wider your aperture, the less there is in focus. And the closer you get to a subject, the more that reduces. So the tiniest bit of movement, and you've lost it, mate. It's gone. Forget it. Now, a simple way around this, of course, is to just stop down and bring in external light to then correct the exposure. That way, you don't have to sacrifice shutter speed and risk movement, and you're still going to get plenty of blur, even at like f9 and f11 at that minimum focus distance. Right, so I'm going to move on. I'm going to try and find something else. This area has been awesome. We've had some bugs that you've already seen. We've had the flowers. The bluebells are just starting to come through, which is awesome. But yeah, I'm thinking maybe some texture shots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same as what I did just then, is I'm going to shoot it with the 60mm macro lens without the macro tubes, and then I'm going to put the macro tubes on this kit lens, just the one I used for the video, which is the Lumix 14 to 42 mega. Oh, it's old and plastic. It's a kit lens, all right. Just to show you again that comparison and what is, you know, what's possible with really quite basic gear. All right, so I didn't have to come too far. I found this log, and it's got all these wood lights on it. So I've gone handheld with the 60mm macro. Now the flash is at 1/8 power. My other settings are 1/200th of a second, f5.6, and ISO 640. I'm going to use exactly the same settings when I switch to that lens in just a second, and then I'll show you both images. Alright, so I was on the way back to the car because it was raining. I didn't want all my gear to get wet, and it stopped before I got there. So I'm coming back to take a shot of this tree. It has all these little white buds on it and white flowers. I'm going to use the macro tubes, the Helios 44M, and the flash on the EM10. Now, as I said, with macro extension tubes, your minimum focus is reduced. So the minimum focus on this Helios 44M is about 16 inches or 0.55 meters. So what I'm finding is that I can get within about maybe 3 or 4 centimeters of the front element, which obviously is a significant reduction from its default. So I'm gonna get some images and I'll show you them, obviously. Right, and so for the final bit of this video, I'm going to go as extreme macro as you can go without getting into the realms of bellows and things like that. So, macro tubes, 60mm macro lens, and I'm going to use the flash. On this little branch down here, there is a ladybird, ladybug, whatever you want to say. I'm going to get as close to its face as possible to get the shot.